All right. So in the syllabus, it says that we're going to talk about licensing today. So we were supposed to, in the syllabus, it says talking about licensing, but I feel like I've been kind of addressing that pretty much every week in one way or another. And the better thing I can do, which I haven't really addressed with you guys, is what I do, what a manager does. And I thought I'd spend some time talking about it so that you can kind of understand like what we do and how we do what we do and why we do what we do, and kind of like understand like what at least I look for as a manager when I'm considering managing somebody. So I want to just kind of dig into that a little bit. When people ask me, what does a manager do? A lot of the times I look at myself kind of as someone who's a diplomat. I'm like a translator. I translate things from people who want to do business with my client to my client, and then from my client to the people they want to do business with. And people always want something from an artist, and artists always want something from the people they do business with. And it doesn't always get communicated in the best language. So it's my job to like hear something like a client's frustration and then express that to the person that the frustration is aimed at in a way that they're going to hear me and do what they need to do to like accommodate what our needs are. And ditto, when other people are doing business with my client, like a record label or a publisher or a promoter or a booking agent or somebody in the press, they want something from my artist. I have to present it to them in a way where they're gonna, first I have to assess like, is this a good opportunity? And then I advise them and I bring it to them, and I have to bring it to them with language that if I feel like they should do it, that I convey that to them. So there's a lot, like as a manager, you're kind of like the guard. You're like the bouncer at the club, and you're the one, like no one gets in the door to talk to your artist without you. No one does business with your artist without talking to you first, if you have a good relationship with your client. So if a label wants to sign an artist, they have to go through management. If a publisher wants to get a license approved, they have to go through management. The manager has to then go to the artist and get approvals. Lots of the time, managers just do stuff without telling their artist, and that can really lead to big problems. So there has to be an open line of communication between an artist and a manager all the time. Lots of artists can be elusive. They don't answer the phone or respond to texts or emails. So it makes it hard to keep business going. As a manager, I kind of also look at it like a tennis match. Like, I don't want the ball in my court. I always hit the ball back as quickly as I can. I don't want people waiting on me. I'd rather wait on them and then follow up with them. Like, to be professional, you got to be that person that's like always responding. Trying to do it respectfully and trying to do things to maximize the potential of what can happen business-wise in any relationship. So I have like, on any day, I have booking agents calling me and like lawyers calling me and label people calling me and artists calling me, asking me for shit. And, just it's a constant stream of requests one way or the other, and I'm fielding them. And it's like keeping those balls in the air, getting them back to all the people they need to get to, and then following through. I remember like early on doing business with Danny in like the early 90s. I was running a recording studio. It was a completely other job that I had. And I remember, Dee, like you paid a compliment to me early on, and I don't usually repeat this stuff, but I'm going to do it because it's like, it puts it in context. You said, Scott, your follow through is really great. And I thought to myself, well, that's pretty cool that he said that. I'm going to keep being good about that. So I've tried to be consistent with always following through on stuff. Not perfect about it, but I think it's important. Like, if there's an opportunity and it's out there until you get to a no, like, just keep following through. Don't be a persistent asshole, but keep following through to like see if you can get to the yes. So yeah, I mean, I think like following through is a really key component to being an effective manager, following through with your clients, with all the potential business opportunities that are out there. And just making sure that like if a loop can be closed and business can be done, that it's getting done. Like I want anyone that does business with me to say Scott is really awesome to work with. Like that's the only feedback I ever really want to get from my artists. That like for instance, Rich Medina, who's a DJ, who goes all over the world to play music. Most of the time, when people are booking him, they're dealing with me first about everything, and then he flies out and does the party. But when he calls me from that city and says, "Yo, this promoter loves you. They said you were so easy to do business with." That's what I aim for, because that's the kind of shit that gets you the extra work outside of having really great clients that you work with. So I take pride in being responsible and getting loops closed as a manager. Um, sorry. In terms of like what I look for as a manager when I'm going to work with someone, I kind of like I don't see myself as a fortune teller, and I don't think I'm clairvoyant or have any sort of like third sight. But occasionally, I will encounter an artist, hear their music, and for some reason, I can see the future. It doesn't happen often. I can count maybe on one hand the amount of times that it's happened. And typically, when it does, it leads to me actually doing business with those people, and we all make some money together. Um, so I kind of like, I listen to that voice in my head that shows me like, here's what the future could look like. And I'll give you a couple examples. Um, First of all, there was a band that I told you guys about last week called the Pimps of Joy Time, who I helped get on the road, and I saw them play, and I thought like, wow, these guys could smash it on the jam band circuit. And I got involved with them, and that's exactly what we did. And they have a career where they play 40 dates a year now, basically on their own terms, where they want to play, when they want to play. They make solid money, and they're a professional working band, touring band. I don't make any money off them anymore because I don't work with them anymore, but like they've got a career, and I saw that career in advance. Like I saw what it could be, and that's exactly what it became. And I'm not saying that they can't be more, but what I saw as like a realistic goal for them is a goal that they have achieved, and that has maintained a career for the guy who controls the band and for the other people who play in the group with him. Like they're professional musicians because of this group, because of the circuit that they play on, because they're such a good band. So that's like a small example, but it's a real world example of it. With Rich Medina, I'd been going to his parties for years, and I was a fan, but I never thought in a million years that he would want me to manage him. And in fact, his girlfriend, mother of his son, was managing him when we first met. And I didn't know that she was looking to get out of that because she wanted to just spend more time taking care of their son. And I met him, and when we got to know each other, I was like, oh my God, dude, you have the best voice. You should be doing VOs. You're such an erudite, interesting individual. Like, why are you not in academia? And slowly but surely, like he asked me to manage him, and he's teaching at Cornell University every summer. He's teaching a course at this place called the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia, on his second round of courses, which starts next month. He gets routinely asked to lecture at different arts institutions, and he did a TED Talk. Like all these things kind of hadn't really ever happened before we worked together. And I know he maybe in the back of his mind thought I'd like to do that, but I think me articulating those things to him opened up something in him and in me as like, this is a goal we can shoot for. So like over the 8 years that we've worked together, like a lot of these boxes that we wanted to check off, we've actually checked off, and he's smashed them. So that's been really gratifying. With Hiatus Coyote, I heard a band that had an album that had just dropped on Bandcamp that nobody knew about. They had fewer than 1,000 fans on Facebook, mostly from their hometown of Melbourne, Australia. Nobody really knew who they were or what they were about, but I was blown away by the album. And the guy who was managing them from the get-go is a very skilled, basically like jack of all trades, can do lots of different stuff. And he shot video of them performing. that was really smooth, that really demonstrated how well they could play on stage, and then synced it to soundboard sound, so it was really good quality. And like, based on the 2 minutes of live footage that I saw of them playing, and then a radio show that I heard them stream early on, I was like, these guys have the goods. They were young, they had a cool look, especially the singer, who had this really unique look. And they had energy and great lyrics and amazing music, and the ability to pull off these intricate and innovative productions on stage that one-upped what they did in the studio, which I thought was pretty much unheard of, especially for this day and age, where musicianship is kind of not really held in the same regard as it has been in previous eras of music. And I saw the future. I saw them really finding an audience worldwide and being very successful. I don't know how successful. Like, to me, like, if they wind up selling out Radio City Music Hall at some point in their career, that would be a pretty awesome pinnacle for them. And I'd be happy, and I think that it's within their reach. And everything that I saw that I thought could happen has happened. And it's amazing. And I take no credit for it at all, but I will give myself credit for going with my gut and taking the opportunity to work with them with another manager at that early stage, because I saw all these things as being viable, and then went into the relationship with those goals of like, how do we get these guys on the road? How do we show people around the world how great they are in concert? How do we find a record label that's going to really get who they are? I wouldn't have guessed Grammy nominations. I wouldn't have guessed a lot of stuff that's happened. I wouldn't have guessed that Drake would sample them or that Kendrick Lamar would sample them. I wouldn't have guessed all that stuff would happen so quickly, but it did, and that's all great. But I definitely guessed that they would be successful and find a really solid audience around the world, which they've most definitely done. So I think a lot of the times, like, as a manager, you go into a relationship and you got to say, what's the upside? Like, how long will it take to monetize this? Because when you're a manager, there are also artists who I work with where I really don't make much money at all, and you're kind of investing in the future. And it's hard for me to do that because I have a limited amount of time during the day, and to be working on something which may not monetize for a year or two, that's really difficult. And it's hard to really put it into terms, you know, like, there have been really talented people I've worked with over the years where I'm getting paid at such scant moments and I'm investing so much to try to build something, and it doesn't pay off, you know. And because I don't always, like, every time, like, that I work with someone, I might just love what they do. I may not see the future like I did in the cases that I told you, but I may just really love what they do and want to get involved and want to help. But it can be a lot of spinning of wheels for little payoff. And it's not all about the money when you're a manager, but this is what I do for a living. This is how I pay my bills. So if I'm not making money too, and I'm spending, 10, 12 hours a week working on something, that's really hard. It's hard to sustain it. So when a new artist comes to me, or if I give an opportunity for a performance or something else for an emerging artist, and they express frustration that I ask them for stuff and say, well, if I had a manager, I could get that stuff. Like I should be managing them when I'm giving them an opportunity instead. And I'm like, you should know how to manage yourself. And I always tell young artists or artists that are new to the game that, like, the best thing you can do is understand what it is to manage yourself, because most people need to do that for a good clip of time before anyone wants to mess with you. And I got into this about touring, that you need to have a solid following in your hometown, and you need to have a solid following somewhere else to get a booking agent interested in working with you. And a booking agent also won't be interested in working with an artist that doesn't have a manager. It doesn't go well when that happens. It's really frustrating when you're waiting on the artist to respond about a gig. I've just heard a lot of nightmare stories about self-managed artists with the booking agent where the flow has been completely convoluted and difficult, and things just didn't go and progress the way they needed to. But if you're at the point where you're, like, getting traction in your hometown and somewhere else, managers will take notice. We kind of, like, as a manager, look for an artist that has some heat on them before we get involved. It's really the only way we can do this well, that we can do this and actually sustain a living for us and for them. I mean, my main job as a manager is to make money for my artist. And then off that, I get paid. Managers get anywhere between 15 and 20%, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes less. If you're a huge artist like Justin Timberlake, you can get away with paying your manager 5% because he's making, 20, $30 million a year, and 5% of $30 million a year is $1.5 million, which is enough if that's your one client and you're putting all your time into it. If he wanted me to manage him for 5%, I would seriously consider it. I would really consider it. But you have to be huge to take a small percentage like that. And to offer a small percentage like that. Most of the time it's between 15 and 20, and managers really do a lot. And usually there's a manager who like oversees all the big stuff, and then there's a day-to-day manager who kind of handles all the minutia of what's going on, scheduling recording sessions, dealing with travel, dealing with the logistics of a tour, and like the big picture stuff goes to the main manager. And I'm not a big time manager like that. I do the big stuff and the small stuff. And, with Hiatus, I've had a partner for all these years that we've been working together. And because he's on the ground with them in Australia, he's really been dealing with the day-to-day stuff. But we share the big picture stuff. And then when they're touring internationally, I'm dealing with the day-to-day stuff. And we're sharing the big picture stuff. And that dynamic has worked pretty well for us thus far. But it's definitely like every relationship develops differently. And, I'm sure a lot of you out there who may hear this lecture, you're thinking like, I really want a manager. And I think most people could use the help. I think more than a manager, what people need early in their career is someone they can go to for guidance, which is kind of another side of what I do, where I can like listen to where you're at, spend some time talking to you, listen to your music, talk about your goals and your aspirations, and help you come up with a game plan that can take you to the next step so that you can get to a place where a manager would want to mess with you, where if you want to go on tour, a booking agent would want to work with you, where you can start to achieve the goals that you've got and know what the next steps are to get to those goals. I think like that's the most important thing most of the people taking this class need to know. That's why I've spent so much time doing the stuff that I do, rather than talking about like what I would do as your manager. Because really it's like telling you how to navigate this industry will help you be a better artist to work with a manager, because you'll know what to ask for when there's someone who comes along and says, hey, I really want to work with you. I know lots of talented people out there, and most of them are able to get management for themselves. And a lot of them I've given friend advice to early on, and like given them a good sense of what they should be expecting from the people that work with them. And they still come to me sometimes and ask me like, hey, what do you think of this situation? And I tell them, but I do it without an agenda because I just want to be helpful. And I think a lot of artists need that. They need that guidance from people early on. And I don't know if that really exists beyond like stuff like this course and maybe a few other things that are out there. It's not easy to get that guidance when you're new to this and you're just kind of like trying to make a name for yourself and trying to like figure out what it is that you do best and try to figure out what it is that makes you the happiest. It's a skill, and it takes time, and it's one of those things that like you got to be patient and sometimes a lot of trial and error to get it to the spot where you feel like this is really working. I found this thing in it and it works for me, and I think I can be successful doing it. It's taken me a while to figure out as a manager like what types of artists I get the best results with, and how to take things from point A to point B to point C to point D to keep focused on those next steps, even as a manager. Because I think it's really easy, and I'll give you another example. Like my partner with Hiatus, he like wanted to do all sorts of stuff like curate a festival, like really early in their career, and it wasn't time. And sometimes it's easy to get bogged down with these goals that like it's not the time. Like you got to be at a place where you're doing really big business, and then you can start to do these things and they come together easily rather than being a struggle. Also, he had ideas that were really ahead of their time, like doing a pop-up shop for the band in 5 cities. Like That wasn't maybe the right time to do it 4 years ago, but it might be in a year because they've got the audience that actually would respond to it and be receptive to it. So it's sometimes like seeing an idea, seeing that maybe it's not the right time, and then tabling it until the time's appropriate. And it takes an effort to figure out what all those things are. And that's kind of what a manager's there to help with. I have to hear like what the aspirations and goals are for artists that I work with, and let them know like, hey, I think we can pull this off in the next 6 months, or hey, I don't think we're ready to do this, but if we can do A, B, and C, we might be. Now I have like with Rich, for instance, he has a lot of friends who are either in the business or they're in other businesses, and they think that because he's an amazing DJ, he should be more successful than he is. And then they'll sit down with me and tell me what I should be doing. And then I have to explain how he's different from the people they're comparing him to. And like, then I have to have a conversation with him later about like why like this person's got an interesting perspective, but it doesn't really apply to you. And like, there's a lot of backtracking, and because people see something from the outside, but they don't see all the angles of it. And sometimes I can see someone who's got a really successful career and I see why they're as big as they are. And sometimes it's more than what somebody on the outside sees. It's a lot of things that they've done over the course of a really long time that help build it. I mean, in Rich's case, he built up a long-standing career as a worldwide respected DJ way before I got involved. But I saw something more from that, and I was able to help him achieve it. And I was also able to help him button up business that had been falling through the cracks because he didn't have somebody that was really doing that without distraction. And I think that for artists, they need that. They need that person that's going to respond to all the messages, that's going to take things seriously, and that's going to be respectful with all the people trying to do business with them. And that's going to be respectful, with their responses to those people, even if they're not the most polite responses. It's really important. I've had labels yell at me, why isn't your artist doing what we want? And if I yelled at the artist I work with and conveyed those words word for word to them, it would have started an all-out war, and nothing good would have come of it. So I have to hear these things and not repeat them, and find a way to convey it in soothing terms to the artist, and then sometimes the other way around, do the same thing. And it's not easy. It can be really stressful to be in that position where you're constantly not sugarcoating something, but putting something into a language that the other person will understand and respond to. And it's the hardest thing in the world to do. I mean, I've had managers from big time management companies for requests on my end send me a one-word response, pass. And that shit stings. I mean, and that's how people in this business do business a lot of the time. So I just feel that in my own world, I can't do it that way. I have to be respectful no matter how big or small you are, because not because you could be big tomorrow, but because we're human beings, and like being rude hurts. So I sometimes have to deal with a lot of rudeness in my job directed at me, but I can never really express that out to the rest of the world. I just kind of have to absorb that pain on behalf of the artists that I work with and on behalf of the people they do business with. And that's a big part of the job as the manager. And it's one of those things that's hard to quantify. And at the same time, it's a huge part of what the gig is. And, so when people ask me, like, what does a manager do? That's a big part of it. I translate. I take on my artist's pain. When they're in pain, I feel it too. When they're happy, I get to feel that too. I've had some of my best moments in life with the artists that I work with, and it's been amazing. But I've also had some of my worst moments in life with the artists that I work with, and it's a struggle, but I understand that the ups and downs are like, that's part of this whole thing. And, if you're a music fan and you listen to music and you love it, you don't realize what blood, sweat, and tears goes into making it and getting it out there and helping make it successful. And once you do appreciate and see that stuff, it just opens you up to how positive the business can be. And that, like, what I'm doing is actually like helping bring to fruition music that makes a lot of people happy. And by making people happy, it gives them a break from whatever it is in life that they're experiencing. And accentuates their life. It's the soundtrack to their lives. It's everything, you know. I see at a hiatus show people that are happier than I've seen at just about any other show. There might be 1,500 people at a show, and you go there and people are just completely transfixed and delighted to be there and so excited. And then, you know, no matter what stress went into the show that day, like, I think the band knows too, like, they make people really happy by doing this. Like, there's a big sacrifice that performers put out there to make their fans happy. And I think a lot of the time, you know, people don't realize that. Fans don't realize that, like, what goes into it, to putting on a show, to putting out an album, that, like, they do this for themselves, but they do this for people. And, like, if you're lucky enough to have an audience that really loves what you do, you want to give it everything. And when you give it everything, a lot of other stuff goes along with it. And sometimes that's not the easiest stuff. So as a manager, like, part of my job is to keep things moving and keep people happy. Sometimes for me, it's just keeping people laughing and keeping the mood light at the toughest times, and just being able to, like, help someone ride through a difficult moment and understand that, like, difficult moments happen and that you get through them. And, like, sometimes when you're in it, you don't realize that I'm going to get through this like I got through the last one. And then I'll get through the next one like that. And I think that's a big part of my job. It's just, like, helping the people that I do business with, whether it's my clients or all the people around, you know, just keep it all moving, because there's a lot of positive times to be had, but it's not always the easiest road to get there. I don't know. I hope this is helpful. So, all right, what else do I want to tell you about managing? You know, I've had artists stolen away from me. I've had all the worst things you can imagine, like, as a manager, like being fired. I've been mistreated. I've, like, everything you can think of. I haven't been mistreated by my current clients. Like, no matter what, there's a lot of love and respect between us. But, like, in past manager artist relationships, I've had to deal with a lot of pain. And that's part of the gig. I think that, you know, as a manager, like, you realize that if anything goes wrong for your artist, the first person to get blamed is the manager. First person to get fired is the manager. You know, most managers don't have contracts with their clients. Doesn't mean you're not going to get paid, but that's just the way that it works. I know a lot of managers who work on a handshake with artists. I know that I've done that in the past. It's just part of the business. You kind of go into it with all the best intentions in the world and try to get the best results. And sometimes if you're not able to get the results as a manager, you got to step away from a project because you're not the right person. But I try not to manage anybody who I wouldn't want to actually be friends with or spend time with, because as a manager, you wind up spending a lot of time with your artists. So you need to have a good personal rapport. If you're uncomfortable with them, it doesn't work. I mean, Danny has worked as a manager too. And I think a lot of the stuff that I'm saying rings true from your experience. And I know just from when you did it, you had a lot of amazing experiences and you had a lot of horrible experiences. And there's a reason that you stopped doing it. Also, you had the ability to produce and engineer and master and all this other stuff that was, like, really, really, really highly skilled. So you were able to pivot just seamlessly because you never stopped doing that stuff even when you were managing. But it's one of those things where, you know, not everybody wants to do it forever. And a lot of people do it and then they think, you know what? I would rather be curating on behalf of a brand than managing. And I have a good friend in the business who pivoted from managing big time artists to working with brands, and he's got a great living. He goes to festivals all around the world and curates events all around the world and works with some of the most amazing artists in unique settings and loves his work. And I look at his career and I think, you know what? I really look up to that dude because he's got something really cool. He found a niche for himself. And I feel like Danny did the same thing with this school, with teaching production to all of you, because he's giving you guys the skill to make your music sound amazing, so that all you have to do is really worry about, did the performance come out right? Did the song come out right? Because you have the skills to engineer it properly, because you know what you're doing using all the best platforms that are available right now. And that's huge. to be able to learn that skill and execute your own music. Because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that wasn't possible. You'd have a cassette driven 4 track, and like you were bouncing tracks around, and it sounded kind of lo-fi and cool, but kind of like shit also. And like if you wanted to get a proper recording on a multi-track, you had to pay someone by the hour, and if you didn't get that shit right, you had a shitty multi-track recording. And guess what? In my previous days as a musician and songwriting, and a songwriter, I had a lot of shitty multi-track recordings. So I know what that's about. Um, so a lot of it is just kind of like knowing when you got to pivot to find the thing that works best for you, and really try to just execute as well as you can once you find that, so that you can build the career that you want. And it may not be the career you imagined, but it'll be at that moment the career that you're meant to do. And then while you're doing it, you may see the next thing come up. I mean, who knows what Danny's going to be doing in 5 years, but I know it's going to be awesome. And I don't know what I'll be doing in 5 years. Hopefully still this, hopefully still teaching here, but I feel like it's going to be great because I'm constantly evolving and moving forward. So I think for any of us, whether we're creatives or we're in the business supporting them, we got to be moving forward. So like it's finding what you do and just consistently maintaining forward momentum. Because as Woody Allen said, even though I hate to quote him, a relationship is like a shark. If it's not moving forward constantly, it dies. But I think with like our careers, like we have to be moving forward constantly, or we're not gonna get where we want to go. And it means staying focused on that next step, always, always, always. And make sure that next step is something you can get to and not something that's like so far in advance. Like I want to be playing festivals next summer, but I've never really gotten more than 10 people to hear me play at a club in my hometown. Like knowing, managing your goals and making sure that you stay focused on them so that you really get there. And that, my friends, in a nutshell, is management by me. And talk to different managers and they'll tell you something different, but this is totally what my experience has been. And I felt like I wanted to share it with you, because I want to continue to give you guys good advice about how to keep furthering your careers so that you can get to the point where people are approaching you to work with you because you're making great music and because you're doing really good work and because you're super professional with what you do. So now I'm going to turn it over to take questions for the next 10-15 minutes. Thanks, guys.
I thought that was awesome. I think that was like a very sincere and genuine, honest expose and sort of into the heart and soul and mind of a manager in a very personal way, that I think just probably doesn't even exist anywhere, or very few places. So that was amazing. My question, I have a whole bunch of questions. I'm sure a lot of other people do. Um, how what's what is the term that you're looking for when you pursue an artist and you want them to sign a management deal with you? Do you like 1 year? Do you like 2 years? Do you like 3 years? Do you do a trial? Like what's the duration you're looking for? Or is it always different?
Usually there's a trial when you get started, and the trial could be anywhere from like a month, 6 months. With Rich, we had been talking for a while, and we did a month trial, and then I was the manager after that. With Hiatus, like we just eased into it, and then by the time we actually got a management agreement in place, like we'd been working together for a year and a half, basically on a hug, and like then we got an agreement, and the agreement was 3 years with a 2 year extension. Um, so I feel like when you know you're doing business together, 5 years is a good amount of time to commit. But I would try to get as long as I could if it's someone who I'm really capable of doing big business with. If I'm trying to get sparks going with someone and it's a new thing, I would do a 3 month trial, and if it's going well and things are progressing, I would do like 2 or 3 years. Um, it just depends. It depends.
Do you have an attorney that's your like guru who writes your contracts and that updates them and you talk to all the time, or not really?
No, I'll call a lawyer when I need him. It's not that often.
Usually, if you're calling a lawyer, there's a problem
Usually, if
that
I'm
could probably
calling
be.
a lawyer, I'm spending a lot of money. So, like I do. I mean, I do rely on lawyers. Like Hiatus's attorney, I rely on all the time for stuff, but not for me, for them. But he's become my good friend, and we communicate about stuff all the time.
So if let's say you're at 15%, not you, but a
Anyone,
man,
one is at
anyone.
15%. Yeah.
So 15% means that for every $100,000 that this artist makes, you get 15 grand.
Yeah, except like expenses get deducted
Even
sometimes.
less
So
then, yeah, even
yeah, it might
less.
wind up being more like 12 or 11.
So 12 grand in New York City gets you, a sushi dinner and maybe like a pedicure or something.
12 grand covers
A couple months, maybe.
rent. I don't, it just for a few months. Yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
so where I'm going with this is, so then you get a artist doing $1 million a year, and then you get your
120,000,
100 to
130,000.
120,000,
Yeah, something like that.
which puts you solidly in the it's chunky, but it's still and for an artist to be making $1 million revenue is no small thing. So my question is two questions, and you don't have to name names. When was the last time you looked at an artist and you're like, this person isn't even making much, but I'm still interested in trying to work with them to get them up to a number. Um, when was the last time you did that, and how often do you do that? Like,
Well, it just depends what they need from me. Like there are people that I know that are doing really amazing work, and they don't need someone like as hands-on as say Hiatus does, where there's a constant stream of work that I have to do. Um, and I'll do it, because I know that it's not going to take up. It's like how much of my time is it going to take, and am I going to be able to help them, and am I going to get paid, and are they going to get paid? And if I'm able to help them make more money and I get paid, and it's not like greatly impacting the other things that I do, then I totally do it.
do
But
you
I think
watch your
like
do you watch your hourly rate in like an impressionistic way, or do you actually like have little apps that watch it and that kind of
I don't
thing?
watch my hourly rate at all.
Okay,
I just do what I got to do.
okay.
But I know that like if I'm working with someone and like they're really requiring a lot of my time and there's no money coming into it, I'll know that like this isn't going to work. And I'll usually step away from it. I'll be like, this just like, let me be your friend. Usually that's what I say. I'm better off being your friend than being your manager because I can't dedicate the time. Also like as a manager, sometimes like you see something and you think like, well, here's a few things that could work. And then you take your shots. And if people respond, then that's great. And if they don't respond, then it's like you took your shots and they didn't respond. Maybe I'm not the right person for this.
Having also been a manager, have manager friends, just
Had a
been,
manager yourself.
yeah, the whole thing. I mean, there is that thing, and you talked about it a little bit, which is there's a certain breed of manager that goes to parties and after people have had several drinks, whispers in their ear that they could blow them up. And if they just got rid of their current manager, and these managers, it's just a thing. It's always sort of been a thing. These managers don't want to do the building they want to just walk right in, take something that's been built, and either just take the money or expand on it. Um, and artists inevitably feel that their success has a whole lot to do with them too, and it does,
Yeah.
but it's a team effort, and the team chemistries and the team strategies and the execution of those strategies is where the results come. So it's not that cut and dry that everything is transferable in that kind of way. What do you feel about that kind of activity? Have you had artists come to you and say, you know what, that guy, he pulled me over at this party and he started talking me up. Like, has that happened? How do you deal with it? What do you tell your
I've never
clients?
had that happen to me where someone's tried to get in their ear and steal them away from me, or at least I've never heard about it. There was the band that I managed, and like they went to they went to Jazz Fest, like, and I knew that things were on the rocks with them. This is the Pimps of Joy time. I can share this story because it's all water under the bridge now, and I knew that the dude was taking meetings with other people while he was out there trying to find another manager to replace me with, a cooler one that could help make them bigger. And in the end, he just fired me. And we negotiated a very reasonable sunset clause for him. Now, understanding what a sunset clause is, which that for a manager means that any business that like I'm a part of generating, whether it's a record deal or a publishing deal or gigs that I had been a part of booking, that I'll get paid on those. And if it's a record deal or a publishing deal and there's royalties that are coming in steadily, that I would get steadily decreasing percentages over the course of like 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years. It depends on who the manager is and how much clout they have. But in this instance, this dude, like, I found out that he was meeting up with other managers and trying to find someone better than me. And like he didn't, but then he still fired me anyway. And then he found another manager like a year later. But he and I are friends. Like I let it go. I can't walk around with anger. I've been badly hurt by other. I had another manager. I'm not another manager. I had another artist who I managed, who I'm not going to name names. And I think at a certain point, he got frustrated with his career and started taking it all out on me, and was abusive, verbally abusive with me, and disrespectful, and did a lot of things to me around other people that just were really mean, where it just was, he was like almost a bully with me. And we had been working together for like 2 years before that and were friends. And then it just flipped to this point where I was being abused, verbally abused and emotionally abused. And I remember one time he was pissed about something. He's like, I don't want to talk to you on the phone anymore. If you want to conduct business, just send me an email and I'll respond. I talk to you too much. Because I speak to my clients. That's part of the way I get stuff done. I feel like phone conversations are way more effective than emails or texts. I feel like a tone is very hard to convey in an email. And I try to be warm in my emails and my texts, but things can escalate out of control via text or email. And then over the phone, I can usually quash something pretty quickly and get to the heart of it and make things okay. And he at one point chastised me and said, why aren't you more like this other manager? He never brings these things to his clients. He just deals with them. And then subsequently, I didn't know that manager. This is a pretty funny story, but I'm going to bring it around. Subsequently, I was in another country at a show in a hotel, letting a friend of mine into the hotel who had come to visit me, who was crashing in my room. And as I was like letting her in to get her approval to come into the room, because we were in a foreign country where they don't necessarily just let guests come up to your room with you. You have to like register them. This dude rocks in with his artists and a few friends, wink, and they wouldn't let the friends in. And he made a whole stink. And like, he managed someone who is not famous. He plays with famous artists sometimes, and he's highly respected, but he's not famous. He can walk the streets with total anonymity most of the time, unless he's in certain parts of LA or New York. Otherwise, I'm not famous. And then he said, do you know who this is? This is blah, blah, blah. And I'm standing there and I'm just like, this is the dude who my former client told me that I should be more like. Fuck him. And it was like an amazing moment of poetic justice for me that happened, because I realized that like his perception of what it was isn't what it actually is. And it just like, it made me feel good. In that moment, I had a really good laugh about it, because like I saw this dude flipping out over something and had no right to do it. And like, anyway, that was a little poetic justice moment. But this dude had told me I should be more like that guy. And like, that's the last guy I want to be like. So that's the moral of that story. But I've had people tell me, why can't you be more like this manager? it hurts. But I'm me, and I do what I do. And there are certain things I do that I think other managers don't do. And, you know, that's I feel good about what I bring to the table.
We're almost at time, literally a minute. I know Davin's been patiently holding his hand
All
up.
right, Davin.
Yeah. Well, can you hear me?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I can probably just, yeah, I don't think we have the time to get into some of this, but is it okay to email either you or like via Discord and like maybe there are questions that are relevant to other people? You could answer them via email or what? I mean,
Office hours? Can we
I
address
guess
some
we
of
do
that
office
stuff on
hours.
Monday?
Really quick, I guess one thing is you kept using the word solid, and I don't really know what your interpretation of solid is. Like, what is solid income or a solid following? Like, you referred to like Hiatus Coyote having like a following of like 1,000 followers, but it didn't sound like that was necessarily like a solid following. So, like,
No, no,
you
but I
quickly
saw
say
but I
whatever,
could
how you would interpret solid, I guess, in terms of.
solid is if you're in your hometown and you do a show, it's packed and you don't know the people that came. It's not your friends.
Okay.
I was just talking to a dude in the coffee shop where I go in Brooklyn, one of the places I go, who's in a band. And he agreed. He's like, I never tell my friends about my shows because I don't want to know anybody in the audience. I want people to come for my music. So that's what I'm saying. And by then, Hiatus, the 1,000 fans they had on Facebook, they didn't know more than, maybe they knew a third of them. The rest of them were unknown. And then it just grew exponentially after that. But I saw the potential. I saw that it would catch on, and it did. So there's always that. I mean, back in the day, it was always like plucking someone from obscurity. But now we look to see what kind of traction an artist has online. And that's even worse now than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And guys, I just want to say, I mean, I have one more lecture to go, but it's been really a pleasure talking with you guys over the past, God, it's been 8 weeks now. And it's really been awesome. And I thank you guys for trusting me enough to take this class. And I hope that I've been helpful.
Yes, very much so.
Awesome. Have a great week, and hopefully I'll see most or all of you on Monday.
Cool. Thank you. Ciao.
Anytime. Take care, guys.